a $40 billion a year industry. It generates more revenue than movies, spectator sports, theme parks, and recorded music combined. 63% of Americans approve of it, and yet the suicide rate for those addicted to it is 200 times higher than with anything else. It is gambling, and that's what today's show is all about. Well, regardless of how romantic it seems to be or how vogue it appears when your favorite celebrity is playing high-stakes poker on TV, gambling has ruined the lives of millions and has hurt countless more. So I invited a man who made his living conning those who gambled against him. Son of the infamous Titanic Thompson, Tommy Thomas was the gambler to end all gamblers until he could no longer live with what he'd become. Now, he's here to shatter the stereotype and to show us just how ugly gambling really can be. Won't you welcome Tommy Thomas?
Glad you.
All right. Wow, so now you have quite a family history and understand a little bit about gambling. Tell us, for those who don't know, who was your father and what did he do?
His name was Alvin Clarence Thomas, but his nickname was Titanic Thompson, and he was considered the most famous gambler from the early 1900s all the way up till he died. He was a great golfer, gambler, hustler, con man. He was in Poker Hall of Fame in Las Vegas. In fact, the Hold'em tournament that you were just looking at with all the chips, he hosted the first tournament back in 1972 at Benny Binyon's Horseshoe Club. He and Shell Wells, the actor.
Wow. So now, did you have a very close relationship with your father?
You know, Joni, when I was growing up, he left when I was a couple years old. But, you know, a fantasy got a hold of me, and that fantasy was that if I became a gambler and was good enough at it, maybe I would have the acceptance and love of my father. So I practiced when I was 14 with a deck of cards, learning to cheat and do all these different things. Went and met him when I was 18 for the first time.
And what happened?
Well, I drove up in a Jaguar XK 150 convertible, and he was living in San Antonio. I came down from Indiana.
So you thought that would impress him?
Well, yeah.
And that's what you wanted to do?
Right. I wanted him to know that I was a gambler just like he was. He didn't even know I was coming. He was 71 years old. His wife was 24, and my little brother was 4.
Wow.
He was hitting golf balls out in the front yard, and he saw that Jaguar, and I saw a gleam in his eyes like he wanted to win my car. And he did. He didn't take any prisoners. I said, I'm your son, I'm a gambler, and I've come to live with you, and I'm a gambler just like you are, Dad. Like, wow, you know, friendship, comrades. Well, we went inside, and he said, you got any money, son? And I had $400, Joni. He won my 400 playing poker, gave it back, playing gin rummy, gave it back, playing pitch, gave it back. Been practicing with a pistol since I was 14. Went out to the pistol range. He'd shoot the same hole over and over with a .45. He beat me doing everything. And I realized I had a lot to learn if I was going to be a professional gambler.
Wow.
But because of who he was, all the world-class gamblers would come to see him. The card sharks that had different tricks and all these things. And I would get exposed to that, and I would see what they would do, and I'd practice 8-10 hours a day learning to do those things.
So did you feel that acceptance you were looking for?
You know what? He respected me as a gambler because I was real good at what I did. But he went to a nursing home when he was 78 years old, and he was in there for like 3 or 4 years. And he finally accepted me, I knew in my heart, because I always wanted to hear my dad say, love me. That was number one. I was on my way to Cincinnati to play poker. He was like 82 years old. But I would go see him every day in the nursing home that I was in town and play cards with him and spend time with him. Well, I was on my way to Cincinnati and I stopped off to see him. And he came up to me and he looked me in the eye, Joni, and he said, "Son, I think I'm going to die here." And then he did something I'd been waiting for my whole life, Joni. Put his arms around me. And he said, "I love you, son." And it wasn't because I was a gambler and I was so good at that. It's because I came to see him every day, that he knew I loved him, and it wasn't about who he was or anything, that I really cared about my dad. And that bonded us right before he died, because when I came back, he had passed away, Joni.
Wow. So that was the last time
That
you
was the
saw him?
last time when he hugged me. And I'd
Wow.
waited since I was that high to hear those words.
So now you continued on in your gambling lifestyle for how long, Tommy?
Well, I started really when I met him at 18, doing it full time, until I was 50 years old. That was 32 years. And in that time, I became one of the best card cheaters in the world. I went all over the world, all over the United States, and cheated the professional gamblers, the businessmen, the pool hall players, the bank robbers. It didn't matter. I gambled with everyone and won their money.
So now you cheated, and did you ever get caught?
Joni, it's just like I was on Celebration one time, and I remember we talked about, I showed you a little mirror that goes under your fingernail.
Yeah.
And if you're holding out a card and you come up here and you watch my hand go up, well, I would come back because you might know it was there, right? But if I went up there and you never looked, I know that I could do that over and over. So you learn to do that and be aware of what people are watching and thinking. So there's always a way to beat somebody.
Wow. And so did you ever get caught and get in trouble at one of the
No,
casinos?
and if anybody really was or had done business with somebody like me where they'd seen all these kind of things, they would simply go like this, and that means, hey, I want in on the money.
Oh.
So they'd either done business with somebody like me or they wouldn't catch you.
So now, but all of this gambling and even the fact that you reconciled with your father, did you have peace?
All right. All those years, I won all that money. I had cars, boats, 3 Harleys, all that kind of stuff. And that's my identity. I didn't have an identity in Jesus Christ. Even though I walked an aisle at 19, confessed Jesus, was baptized and all, and they said I'm born again and going to heaven, that wasn't true, because I didn't really get a new heart. When you get a new heart, you stop going your way and you go God's way. Even if you slip back, there's conviction and you want to go and do it God's way. So I really wasn't born again. I enjoyed the gambling until I was 50 years old, and then something happened. I took a real good look at me. Got up one morning and looked in the mirror and took a good look at Tommy Thomas and realized, I said, Lord, I've been taken my whole life. I said, if I die, I want somebody to remember me for something besides being good at cheating people. And I said, Lord, I want to give something back. And God had been waiting 32 years. He called me at 19. I went in a little church and read the Bible in an empty church late at night, and God was calling me to preach. And I didn't know that, Joni. But God had been waiting to hear those words, and 2 weeks later, getting a haircut, and a lady in there in a wheelchair, Margaret Mobley's her name, awesome woman of God, told the lady that was cutting her hair some things about me, and she ran back and said, Tommy, this lady just told me you're a professional gambler, you make a lot of money, you have a lot of nice things, you got a big heart, you're not all that happy, and God's got you on a long leash. Joni, I walked up, made a joke about that. 2 weeks later, the night before Easter, 11 years ago, she sent a message. God's got you on a short leash, the devil's made a bet on your soul, and God has covered the bet. And I said, where do you go to church? I'll be there. I went to church that morning, we went to lunch. I said, what are you trying to tell me, lady? Tommy, when you were 19, God called you to be an evangelist. She knew in the spirit that I went in that little church and read that Bible. And when she said that, Joni, it's like a picture of hot oil, and I felt the hot oil go down. And she said, look at his face. Can you see that his countenance is completely changed? And that moment, I was born again.
Wow.
And knew it.
Amazing. Well, he had 3 Harleys, a Porsche, a BMW, a speedboat, but all that money couldn't fill the emptiness in his heart and make him forget all of those he hurt for selfish gain. After the break, Tommy tells us more about the choice he made. We'll be right back.
Gamblers, professional gamblers, it didn't matter who it was. I would win their money with a deck of cards.
Well, one-time professional gambler Tommy Thomas no longer travels across the country chasing his next mark at the poker table. Today, he chases those lost to gambling and helps them find their way home. As we talked about just a few moments ago, you are now in ministry and you are taking the rest of your days here on this earth to share the love of God because He did something incredible in your life.
It's just like Daryl was talking earlier on your show. God set him free. Now he's taking that message and sending it out. He got into darkness for a little while, but now he's just sending the light out to other people to help others, and that's what it's all about.
So now, I said during the break, do you know if anyone may have witnessed to your father? Or do you know if your father ever had an opportunity to pray? Because you said you saw him that last time, and of course at that point you're still immersed in this sinful lifestyle. And you said what?
Western Ware, which is one of the members of the National Coalition Against Legalized Gambling, one of those that goes before the Congress and speaks out when they try to expand gambling, happened to be in the audience today.
Happens to be in the audience
today. He's in the audience today.
All right.
And he didn't know I was going to be here, what the program was about.
You're kidding. Now,
no.
What's your name, sir?
Weston Ware.
Western Ware. But what's your name? Your name in
That
Western?
is my name.
Oh,
W-E-S-T-O-N.
Okay, Weston.
That's it.
Okay,
I
I
don't
thought that
have
was...
my boots on today.
Okay. So now, tell us what happened then.
Well, we became friends a couple of years ago, and he was in Austin, and he picked up the phone and called me one day a couple of years ago, and he said, Tommy, I'm in Austin. I'm with my brother. I think it was your brother. And he said, my brother just told me when I was talking about you that I was ministering in the nursing home where your dad died, and I had the opportunity to tell him about Jesus right before he died.
Wow.
Now, what's the chances of that God would let me know that?
Amazing. So your brother told you that story?
He was the pastor of First Baptist Church in in Austin for 22 years. He's passed away now.
Wow.
And he had met and was very impressed with Titanic Thompson and had witnessed to him.
Amazing. Yes. That is amazing. The
Only
Lord
God.
works in mysterious
Yes, He
ways.
does.
So here you found that out how many years later?
2 years ago, and my dad died back in 1972.
Amazing.
And just found out.
So now for those that are watching today, Tommy, and you know that you have a problem with gambling. And now there are other addictions as well. There's alcohol addiction, drug addiction, sexual addiction, et cetera, et cetera. But we're talking specifically about gambling today. What are some of the things they can do to come out of this, and what needs to happen?
I can, in a nutshell, get so full of Jesus that there's no room for gambling or anything else. Just spend time in the Word. Abide in Him. He'll abide. If you abide in Him and His Word abides in you, you can have anything you ask. So the Father will be glorified.
Right.
And then you can bear fruit. How do you bear fruit? You get free to help others. Realize what gambling really is. Satan's biggest lie is the next wager is your success.
Yes.
And that you can get something for nothing.
So a personal relationship with Jesus Christ first.
Okay, now the programs they have out there, like your guest was talking about, going to Gamblers Anonymous, you are not supposed to, as a child of God, stand up and say, I am an addicted gambler or a compulsive gambler, because that's not who you are. He made a wrong turn, and God put people in his life to get him back on track. But he got free. But it wasn't because of the program, it was because of Jesus and the people that God brings in your life to show you the way and what's really important. They ask him a question. Do you really want to gamble the rest of your life, or do you want to serve the Lord?
Yes.
And when that choice was there, see, you're deceived a lot of times. You don't recognize that for what it is. You know, Jesus said, Peter, the devil will sift you a little at a time. So he just doesn't come up and show you a picture of your family and everything and say, when you make this first bet, you're going to lose all of it. You would never do it.
Right.
So you bet $5, $5, and the addiction is the high. And so to keep the high going and the rush, when you bet $50, it's a lot stronger than the $5. After you bet 50 for a while, then it's $100. It's progressive, addictive, and then it becomes dangerous because pathological gamblers, 62% of them commit at least one crime to support their habit.
Wow. But there is help, there is healing,
Yes.
and we know it is an addiction that can affect us all, even the leaders of our faith.